guys, in today's episode I'm going to show you how to fix your disc and pads on your TJ. Let's get into it. Discs and pads can be daunting to some people, but in reality it's incredibly simple to do. With a relatively small amount of tools, such as a 13mm spanner, especially for the TJ, that's for the calipers, and then your relevant wheel socket, that's pretty much all you need. And then you might need a few other things, but there is no special techniques in order to get these things changed. So stepping through the process. So what we're going to do is just take the wheel straight off. So it's always good to loosen these wheel nuts while the wheel's on the ground. It stops the wheel from spinning. So as you can see, I've already pre-done that. Get those to one side, out of the way. And then the wheel should come straight off. You could chuck your wheel under the brace just as another safety precaution if you don't have any axle stands. So what you'll find is with the brakes and calipers, the disc is basically free floating on your axle hub. So these bolts are actually behind the disc, that just slides. So right now, as you can see, there's movement on there, which is good. And then on the actual caliper itself, you've got two 13mm bolts that hold the caliper. You undo those, move the caliper off, just put it aside, change your disc, and then change your pads. If once it comes to putting the pads back onto the brand new disc, what you'll find with the extra meat on the pads, you'll have to open up the caliper. So if you don't have a caliper tool, you can use a crowbar, but make sure you use the crowbar to open these pads with the old pads in place, so you're not worried about damaging the old pads. So I suspect that's what we're going to do, having a look at the piston. So we'll probably need that extra 5mm of clearance. So we'll do that. So the caliper needs to come off first. 13mm socket, relatively easy. And if you stay on top of your brakes and you use a lot of copper grease like we've done here, it really helps in the long run, and it will speed up the process. So we've already done one wheel already, and basically you can, with the right maintenance and some decent set of tools, you can change these brakes and discs in relatively no time at all. So we have done the first wheel, everything's back on and reassembled in about 30 minutes, so you're probably about an hour. And then your wheels are done. So it's definitely worthwhile keeping on top of your brakes. They're a crucial tool to your vehicle, so get these little bad boys out of here. While you're down here doing your brakes, it's always a good time to inspect all the seals. You can have a look at your axle seals, because you can have a good view of everything while you're down here. It's a good opportunity to have a look at everything and re-grease anything that needs to be re-greased. This is a 23-year-old vehicle, so there's a lot of restoration that needs to be done on a lot of the nuts and bolts, as they've been rusted out due to the amount of salt that we have in the roads here in the UK. So that's an ongoing process. So with these particular calipers, what you'll find on the actual pads themselves, if I get the new one, so you've got these basic retaining teeth, and then you've got like a little head. Basically that's how it will go onto the actual brake caliper. So that sits at the bottom of this sort of retaining plate there, and that kind of slides in. So it shows you how it pivots, and then you can pull the caliper off. So it will take a little bit of persuasion, and then they're off. There we go. So if you have a look at the caliper, yeah, these pads they've been sat for so long, not really good. So there's still a little bit of meat we can get into, so we need to compress the cylinder, the actual piston itself. So what we'll do is we'll put this out of the way, so we're not putting any stress on the brake lines. Put that out of the way, just balance it on there. Okay, now it gives us a good opportunity just to slide the disc straight off. As you can see, very, very simple to take straight off. If you have an issue taking the disc off and it's actually stuck on there due to rust or anything like that, what we found is if you actually split your axle bolt, loosen that off, and then if you pull your axle off, you'll obviously have a look at the axle bearings and your wheel bearings, and what that gives you an opportunity just to knock this retaining plate out of the disc, because sometimes they do stick to there, but luckily with the amount of copper grease in there, it's kept everything nice and rust free. So we can get that out of the way. The new disc is ready to go straight on. So we've gone for a very similar design. We wanted the vented design for the disc to keep everything nice and cool, and then I saw a nice little design on this disc which actually helps with obviously braking performance. These grooves in the disc, which is quite cool. So a very, very cheap kit to get as well. So for those of you who are on a budget, and especially during this lockdown, use the time, and it's a good little kit. I think we only paid about £70 for this. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. So once you get your caliper back on and your pads seated, everything's tightened back up. You want to make sure that the face of your disc is nice and clean from all the grease that you have been applying to any of the components, especially the threads. Make sure that's nice and clean. Get yourself a good dry cloth. If you've got any brake cleaners, now's the time to use it, because you don't want to contaminate your pads, especially when they're brand new. And then the next step is obviously get your wheel back on, and we've got to bed these brakes back in. So we've got to take it for a little bit of a drive, and then we've got to do some brake tests. So it's going to be interesting to see the difference between these old discs. Obviously you've seen the previous one, it was really, really damaged, so it's going to be interesting to see the performance of these new discs compared to those old ones. So now it's just a case of getting them bed in, and then going from there. Now that we have an opportunity, once the discs and pads have now been successfully installed, grab this opportunity and go take your vehicle for a drive and bed those brakes in, and just check that everything is wearing nicely. And then, especially if some emergency stops, you want to make sure that your calipers are working together and the power is distributed correctly. So in our case, unfortunately, that's not the case. So we've got a lot of looks like binding, and a little bit of, when we do emergency brake, it is pulling to the right. So I'm going to have to take the calipers off, give them a good service, and bleed the brake. So that's definitely going to be another video. We'll show you how to do that and get a nice service kit for the calipers. To be honest, I think they do need them because they've been sat for such a long time. But overall, the braking performance has increased tenfold. As you can see with in the video, the other disc was absolutely shot. So they're not the best performing brakes. So these are 10 times better. And if you have a look at the actual discs themselves, the actual wear on the disc is actually quite good. Much more uniformal. And those grooves are doing wonders for getting all that dust out of there, out of those brake pads, and it's awesome. So yeah guys, that's pretty much it. That's a wrap for the video. If you guys liked it, please hit a thumbs up, and you can see some more content on the TJ. And if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing. It really helps us grow. You see some more content on the Ranger and other various bits and pieces. So yeah, hopefully we'll see you guys in the next one.